Isabel Oakeshott is with us, Talk's international editor. Just as we came on air, Isabel, Donald Trump retaliating to the EU's 50% tariff on US whiskey. Trump has now threatened a 200% tariff on European alcohol in response. He doesn't muck about, does he, Donald? He's just like, right, let's pick a number. What's going to really kill them and get them to change their mind? 200%. It's going to go on a bit like this. I'm sure it'll change, but this seems to be the direction of travel.
I mean, I think we've got to just share Donald Trump's statement, or a bit of it anyway, because it's so funny. He says the European Union, one of the most hostile and abusive taxing and tariffing authorities in the world, formed for the sole purpose of taking advantage of the United States, not quite true, has just put a nasty 50% tariff on whiskey. If it's not removed immediately, the US will shortly place a 200% tariff on all wines, champagnes and alcoholic products coming out of France and other EU-represented countries. This will be great for the wine and champagne business in the US. Well, it would be. I mean, it would be absolutely devastating if it happens. He hasn't half thrown the cat amongst the pigeons with that one.
Yeah, just a little bit. And as if that wasn't enough, he's giving the Kremlin a bit of kind of Zelensky treatment now. This is the first time, really, we've seen the president really have what could
even-handed.
Yeah, because he's been accused of, you know, hang on, what about Russia? You've said nothing about Russia. What are they, friends? Are you a puppet of Putin, etc.? Well, he was clearly saving it up for the big moment, and today we know the Kremlin rejected calls for a ceasefire, with Ukraine arguing it would merely give Kyiv time to sort of regroup and rearm. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump has threatened severe economic consequences for Russia if Putin refuses to engage. Let's have a listen to Mr. Trump.
I can do things financially that would be very bad for Russia. I don't want to do that because I want to get peace. I want to see peace, and we'll see. But in a financial sense, yeah, we could do things very bad for Russia. It would be devastating for Russia, but I don't want to do that because I want to see peace. And we're getting close to maybe getting something done. We've got Ukraine done, and as you know, I've always said that Ukraine might have been the more difficult party. You were here a week ago when some interesting things happened. I had somebody that didn't seem to want peace. Now he's agreed to peace. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, no one on the planet, politically speaking, Isabel, operates like this. But, you know, he's brought it to the table and could succeed. But Russia, bit of a sticking point now.
I mean, this is a completely novel approach to diplomacy, and it actually abuses the word diplomacy, doesn't it? He doesn't do diplomacy. He simply does carrot and stick. And as you say, there's not been any sign of the stick against Russia until now. And I think it's rather belated. And Russia is saying, actually, we don't want a short-term ceasefire. We only want something long-term that's sustainable and reflects Russia's interests. And let's see if Trump ratchets it up further. I mean, he's threatening about economic sanctions. Well, there already are very punitive sanctions, so I'm not quite sure what he has in mind there. I think what the EU and the UK, more importantly, would like to see would be the ability to actually use some of those frozen assets to help Ukraine at this point. I think it's 300 billion. I mean, huge sums of money that are tied up Russian assets. That would be painful. That would hurt if a system were found to actually release some of that money. Yeah, all of that money, ideally.
Well, it's going to be anything but dull over the coming weeks on this one. I was about to say let's lighten things up with a bit of Disney, but I don't know whether it is that light. Disney's scaling back the Hollywood premiere of its Snow White remake following a string of controversies, including cast disagreements over Gaza. I mean, who would have thought that would even be a headline? The cast are disagreeing over Gaza. Really? How is that a thing? Nonetheless, let's have a little snippet, I should say, of the trailer.
Wait. It's a human.
What did you think I was?
Nothing. Ghost.
You'll be safe from the Queen here.
The Queen stole everything from all of us.
I'm gonna need your help.
It's time to restore our kingdom.
It's time Time to restore the kingdom. There it is, the non-binary Snow White.
It's time to restore the United Kingdom. I think we can all get on board with that. Are you going to be going along to the movie?
Do you know what? I might just swerve it on this occasion. I mean, I saw a little bit of the other one quite recently on Disney, and I mean, it looks quite old now, just in terms of visually speaking. But these were beautiful films and stories, and nobody was kind of sitting down with a little tick box, and there was no HR department saying, "Oh, you haven't got someone in who ticks this box of identity," or "There's not somebody who represents this particular community." You know, we didn't faff around back in the day. I think life was better for it, frankly.
I mean, I'm surprised the movie's still called Snow White, aren't you? I mean,
yes, indeed. Yeah, which is it's discriminatory with the word white, and frankly, meteorologically speaking, I'm afraid why should snow get all the glory here?
I know. I'm sure we could come up with some alternative there. But odd that the cast are falling out over politics. I mean, that whole industry is so woke, as we know. It's just a complete kind of net of vipers when it comes to politics.
Indeed. Just finally, Isabel, you said you've been in Israel recently. I'm sure it wasn't a holiday. You're a diligent international journalist. What were you doing there?
Well, I was doing so many different things, getting up to speed with the latest position. We had some very interesting briefings from the IDF, some very interesting briefings from intelligence sources, from the security services there. I was yesterday morning in Hostage Square, which is a kind of scene where the relatives, certainly representatives of families who still have loved ones in captivity, and even relatives of those who've come home, gather, and people show solidarity in the continuing fight to bring the remaining hostages home. And I hadn't realized, I mean, it's a hell of a scene there. They've got a whole what they call a Shabbat table laid out for I think 60 places, maybe more than that, for, with empty places for the hostages, symbolizing that desire to bring them home and come together. They also have a kind of makeshift replica of a Hamas tunnel in the Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, and you go inside that, and it's quite eerie. They've reproduced the sound of artillery overhead, and the whole thing is papered with pictures of the missing ones. So it was a really incredibly informative visit, and I was left with a sense that the most Israelis are quite depressed, I think, not just by the fact that there are still hostages in captivity and the bodies of loved ones, but also by the lack of the sort of paucity of progress on this. There's no obvious solution, and Hamas, whilst a little bit debilitated, is by no means been eliminated.
Yeah, spot on. Isabel, thank you as ever. Isabel Oakeshott is Talks International editor.